The frost mirror never showed a face. It showed guilt. That was what every child in Veilguard learned, before they learned to fear winter, wolves, or kings. The mirror stood in the royal judgment hall, taller than a war gate framed in black ice and silver bone. Its surface was always clouded with mist, though no fire ever warmed it. A liar who touched it saw his blood turn dark. A traitor saw the dead rise behind him. A false claimant saw her reflection split open and reveal the beast she had deceived. Tonight, the winter court dragged Nyra Vale before it, not because she had stolen gold, not because she had harmed royal blood, because a dying silver wolf cub had chosen to sleep beneath her cloak. The judgment hall was packed beneath a ceiling of frozen glass. Alpha lords stood in white fur and black armor. Noblewomen whispered behind veils of lace and moonstone. Guards lined the walls beneath banners of Veilguard's crowned black wolf. At the far end, on a throne carved from frozen oak and old wolf bone, Alpha King Cassian Vare watched in silence. Nyra knelt below him with frost chains locked around her wrists. She was barefoot. Her gray dress was thin, patched at the hem, still smelling faintly of kennel, straw, and smoke. Her dark hair had been roughly tied back, but loose strands clung to her cheeks. She did not look dangerous. That was part of the humiliation. The court wanted everyone to see how little it took to make an abandoned Omega kneel. Nyra had no bloodline worth recording. She had been found as a child near the northern river, half frozen, with no family mark and no pack scent. Veilguard did not waste such children. It fed them enough to work and named them enough to file. Veil was not a family name. It was what the record keepers gave to abandon things, so the page would not remain empty. For 12 years, she had belonged to the lower kennels. She cleaned feeding rooms, carried herb water to wounded wolves, slept beside sick pups when no one noble wished to touch them, and learned that kindness was safest when no one saw it. But the silver cub had seen her. 3 nights ago, the weakest royal wolf cub had vanished from the sacred nursery. He was born pale as moon ash and too small for his bloodline. The healers had called him doomed. The priests had called him unlucky. Nyra had found him shaking behind the kennel hearth, too cold to cry. She had wrapped him in her cloak, fed him the goat milk meant for her supper, and held him until his breathing steadied. By morning, guards found him asleep against her ribs. Now the court called it soul-luring. Lord Errand, High Counselor of Veilguard, stood beside the frost mirror in white fox fur robes, his narrow face arranged into sorrow. Nyra Vale, abandoned Omega of the lower kennels, you are accused of drawing royal wolf, blood from its rightful house, concealing a sacred cub, and using unknown shadow magic against the king's line. Nyra lifted her head. I did not lure him. He was dying. A ripple passed through the hall. Omegas could answer questions. They were not supposed to sound wounded by them. Aaron's mouth tightened. The cub was found beneath your cloak. Because he was cold. Royal wolves do not seek comfort from gutter blood. A few nobles laughed. Nyra lowered her eyes before the shame could reach her face. The court liked tears. It used them as proof. But beside the throne, the silver cub whimpered from inside a crystal cage. His tiny paws pressed against the clear wall, pale eyes fixed on her. Alpha King Cassian looked toward the sound. For one heartbeat, something shifted in his face. Not softness, not mercy. Something buried deeper, like pain trying to remember itself. Then Aaron spoke again, and the king's expression froze. The frost mirror will decide. The hall fell silent. No abandoned Omega had ever been permitted to touch the royal mirror. People like Nyra were punished in smaller rooms, where no relic needed to remember them. Bringing her here was not justice. It was theater. They wanted the mirror to reject her publicly. They wanted the king to see that mercy given to low blood was dangerous. 2 guards hauled her upright. The frost chain burned her wrists. She stumbled but refused to cry out. Across the hall, the cub scratched harder at the crystal cage. Cassian's gaze followed her as she was dragged toward the mirror. His eyes were pale gray, almost silver, but empty in a way that frightened her more than rage would have. He looked like a man who had closed too many doors and no longer heard what was trapped behind them. Nyra stopped at the base of the mirror. Cold poured from it. Aaron's voice sharpened. "Place your hands on the glass and swear innocence before the court." Nyra swallowed. If the mirror named her guilty, she would not simply be punished. She would disappear into the old ice cells beneath the palace, where condemned omegas were used until their names faded from ledgers. She looked once at the cub, then at the king. "Please," she whispered, "whatever happens to me, keep him warm." A few nobles laughed again. Cassian did not. His gaze dropped suddenly to the shadow pooled at her feet. The torches bent strangely. For one heartbeat, Nyra's shadow did not match her body. It stretched long behind her, darker than it should have been, shaped almost like a wolf lowering its head. Cassian's hand tightened on the throne. Aaron saw it. "Proceed," he ordered. Nyra placed both chained hands on the frost mirror. Nothing happened. No dark blood. No dead names. No beast of guilt. The silence stretched until the nobles stopped smiling. Then the mirror's cold moved through her palms, into her wrists, up her arms, and down into the shadow beneath her feet. It searched her memories. Kennel floors, hunger, frozen hands, the dying cub, nights spent giving warmth to creatures no one expected to survive. It found fear, loneliness, mercy. Then it found something that was not hers. The frost mirror cracked. Every torch in the hall turned blue. Nyra tried to pull away, but the mirror held her gently, terribly, as if it had not been waiting to condemn her. It had been waiting to find what she carried. Her shadow rose from the floor. The court screamed. Inside that shadow, a massive wolf soul lifted its head black as midnight, crowned with frost, silver eyes wounded and ancient. It did not look at Nyra. It looked at Alpha King Cassian Vare. The mirror cleared. For the first time in living memory, it reflected not the accused, but the throne. In its frozen surface, the court saw Cassian as a wounded child bleeding in the snow, and a small Omega girl kneeling beside him, pressing her own shadow over his chest to keep half his dying wolf soul from escaping into the dark. Nyra stopped breathing. She did not remember that. Cassian did. He rose from the throne, his face stripped of royal coldness. The wolf soul inside Nyra's shadow pressed one spectral paw against the mirror. Then the frost mirror spoke, in a voice like ice, breaking over deep water. No guilt. The crack widened. No theft. Every alpha in the hall lowered his head. The mirror's final words turned the entire court silent. The abandoned Omega has carried the king's missing soul since childhood. The abandoned Omega has carried the king's missing soul since childhood. The frost mirror's words remained in the judgment hall long after the sound faded. No one breathed. No one laughed. The Alpha Lords kept their heads lowered because their wolves would not allow them to rise. The noblewomen who had whispered behind veils now stared at Nyra's shadow as if it were a blade held over the entire court. Behind her, the black wolf soul stood tall and silent, crowned with frost, its silver eyes fixed on Alpha King Cassian Vare. Nyra could not move. Her chained hands were still pressed to the cracked mirror. Frost curled around her fingers, but it did not burn. The silver cub whimpered inside its crystal cage, pressing its nose to the wall as if it recognized the great soul rising from her shadow. Cassian descended from the throne. One step, then another. The court parted without command. Up close, he looked less like the cruel king the lower kennels feared, and more like a man who had just found a wound inside himself with someone else's hands around it. His face remained severe, but his eyes were no longer empty. Pain had entered them, and with it, something far more dangerous than pity. Recognition. Lord Errand moved quickly. Your Majesty, step away from her. Cassian did not look at him. Why? The mirror has been corrupted. The frost mirror cracked again. A thin, violent sound. Every wolf in the hall growled. Errand's face tightened. Or manipulated. An abandoned Omega with shadow magic cannot be trusted near royal blood. Nyra turned slightly. I have no magic. Errand's eyes flashed. You have half the king's soul standing behind you. The words struck her harder than the mirror's cold. She looked at the shadow beneath her feet. The black wolf soul lowered its head toward her, not threatening, not commanding. Almost tired, almost hurt. Silver cracks ran faintly through its spectral fur, as if it had been wounded long ago and never healed. Cassian stopped before her, just beyond reach. You do not remember me, he said. It was not a question. Nyra swallowed. I remember the kennels, the river ice, hunger, nothing before. His jaw tightened. The frost mirror's surface brightened again. In it appeared the same childhood vision, a battlefield under falling snow, a wounded boy bleeding beside a broken war banner, and a little girl crawling toward him through ash and ice. She was small, thin, dark-haired, with blood on her cheek and terror in her eyes. When the boy's wolf soul tore loose from his chest, the girl pressed both hands over the wound and opened her shadow like a cloak. Cassian watched the memory as if each image cut him open. I remember cold, he said quietly. A spear. My father shouting. Then you. Nyra shook her head. I would remember saving a king. You were a child. So were you. The words landed between them with unexpected force. For a moment, the hall faded around them. No throne. No court. No chains. Only two children in a memory. Neither had been allowed to keep whole. Then Errand spoke again. This proves the danger. If she truly shelters the missing half-soul, then her life is tied to the king's. She must be secured immediately. Secured. Nyra flinched. Cassian saw it. His gaze dropped to the frost chains, still wrapped around her wrists. For the first time, shame crossed his face. Not soft, not dramatic, but sharp and awake. Remove her chains, he said. Errand stiffened. Your Majesty. Cassian turned his head. Now. The guard holding the key hesitated only once. Then he rushed forward and unlocked the frost chain. The metal fell from Nyra's wrists onto the marble with a small, brutal sound. Nyra rubbed the raw skin beneath. Freedom did not come. Only a little less captivity. The silver cub began clawing wildly at the crystal cage. Nyra turned toward it before she could stop herself. Let him out. A noblewoman gasped at the command in her voice. Nyra lowered her eyes instinctively, but Cassian did not punish her for speaking. He looked at the cub, then at the great wolf soul behind her. Something passed between the two wolves that no human voice could translate. Open the cage, he ordered. The crystal lock snapped. The cub tumbled out and ran straight to Nyra. She dropped to her knees and gathered him into her arms. His small body shook against her chest, but when his nose brushed her shadow, the black wolf soul bent down and breathed over him. The cub calmed at once. The court saw. Fear returned with a new shape. Lady Sorrel of the Eastern Houses stepped back. She commands royal wolves. No, Nyra whispered. He was afraid. Errand seized the moment. And so are we. Your Majesty, if the carrier can soothe royal wolf, blood, she can influence the succession. If she runs, your wolf remains divided. If she dies, you may die. If she learns what she carries, she may become more powerful than the throne. Nyra held the cub tighter. There it was, the old transformation. In one breath, she had gone from worthless Omega to royal threat. The court had not stopped wanting to cage her. It had only changed its reason. Cassian looked at Errand. You knew. The counselor said nothing. The frost mirror answered for him, its cracked surface filled with a new vision. A hidden chamber lined with frozen wolf skulls. Young Erend stood beside a stone table where child Cassian lay unconscious, a silver wound splitting his chest. Child Nyra stood in the doorway, trembling, snow in her hair. A priestess said, "The girl sheltered half his wolf soul. It cannot be removed without killing them both." Young Erend replied, "Erase her memory. Put her where no noble house will look. Keep her alive. If she dies, he dies." The vision vanished. The hall erupted. Cassian crossed the distance to Erend and seized him by the throat, driving him against the side of the frost mirror. "You hid her in the kennels." Erend choked, but his eyes did not lower. "I kept you alive." "You hollowed me. I preserved the crown. You made me governable." That word silenced the hall. Governable. Nyra felt the black wolf soul shudder behind her. She understood then why Cassian's eyes had always seemed empty in stories told by kennel servants, why mercy rarely survived his judgments, why the council's voice had always reached him before any plea did. He had not been born cold. He had been left incomplete, because an incomplete king was easier to rule. Cassian released Erend. The counselor collapsed, coughing. The frost mirror dimmed, then showed another image. A northern forest beneath a blackening moon, ice roots covering a buried shrine, and two ancient handprints carved into stone, one clawed, one small. A voice whispered from the mirror, "The half-soul must return before the winter eclipse, or the king's wolf will hollow forever." Nyra looked at Cassian. Cassian looked at the wolf soul in her shadow. Erend smiled through the bruises on his throat. "You see, she must be taken to the shrine of first shelter, before the eclipse deepens, willing or not." Nyra's body went cold. The cub whined against her chest. Cassian's gaze shifted to her. The court waited for him to command her, to claim the soul, to order her body where his survival required it. Instead, he said, "Will you go?" Nyra stared at him. No one had asked her will in this hall before. Erend snapped, "Your Majesty, she does not have the right to refuse." Cassian did not look away from Nyra. "She has carried what was mine longer than I have. She has the right to answer." The frost mirror pulsed blue. Truth. Nyra did not trust him. Not yet. But the word answer opened, a space where a chain should have been. She looked toward the broken mirror, the frightened cub, the soul in her shadow, and the king whose life had been hidden inside hers. "I will go," she said, "but I will not be dragged." Cassian nodded once. "Then no one drags you." Outside the judgment hall, wolves began howling across Veilguard. The moon above the frozen glass ceiling darkened at the edge. The winter eclipse had begun. The winter eclipse began as a thin black bite at the edge of the moon. By the time the hidden doors of the judgment hall opened, half of Veilguard was already howling. Nyra walked beneath the broken frozen glass ceiling, with the silver cub in her arms and the king's missing wolf soul moving inside her shadow. No chains held her wrists now, but the court followed as if invisible ones still circled her body. Alpha lords watched her with fear sharpened into calculation. Noble women whispered behind pale hands. Guards kept their spears lowered, though every instinct told them to point steel at the abandoned Omega, who carried half a king. Cassian walked beside her, not ahead. That unsettled the court, more than any declaration could have. An Alpha King did not walk beside Kennelblood. He commanded it to follow, yet Cassian matched her pace across the shattered hall, one hand still bloodied from catching the assassin's arrow. His gray eyes fixed not on the nobles, not on Erend, but on the black wolf soul that stretched from Nyra's feet like a living night. Lord Erend was brought under guard behind them, throat bruised, dignity intact. Men like him did not need freedom to remain dangerous. He carried authority in the way he breathed. At the western arch, Nyra stopped. Beyond the open doors lay the winter courtyard, the stables, the frozen road to the northern river. Snow fell hard enough to blur the palace walls. The eclipse shadow darkened the moon with each passing breath. Cassian looked at her. The shrine of first shelter lies beyond the river. Erend gave a low laugh. If the old roads still exist. Nyra turned. You know where it is. I know where it was buried. Then you will guide us. The counselor's eyes narrowed, but the frost mirror behind them pulsed faintly. Though its shattered surface lay in pieces across the hall, truth still listened. Erend bowed his head with false obedience. As the soul, carrier commands. Nyra hated the title at once. Soul carrier, shelter, threat, Omega. They kept inventing names for her before she could understand her own. Cassian seemed to hear the cruelty in it. Her name is Nyra. The simple correction cut through the hall more sharply than a shout. Nyra did not look at him, because if she did, the ache in her chest might become too visible. Outside, the silver cub lifted its head and whined toward the north. The black wolf soul in her shadow answered with a low rumble that made the snow swirl away from her feet. A path appeared beneath the storm, not made of stone or light, but of absence. A trail where frost refused to settle. The soul remembers, Erend whispered. Cassian's face hardened. Then we follow it. They rode before the court could gather courage to stop them. Nyra was given a winter mare, small and steady, with a cub tucked beneath her cloak. Cassian rode beside her on a black warhorse. Erend was bound to a guard saddle behind them. A dozen royal wolves followed without command, their bodies low, their ears turned toward Nyra's shadow. The nobles remained behind, but fear traveled faster than horses. By dawn, all Veilguard would know the king had left the palace with an Omega who carried half his soul. The road north cut through pine forests and frozen marsh. Wind tore at Nyra's face. The cub shivered against her chest. Beneath the horse, her shadow moved wrong, stretched long over snow, even when moonlight fell behind her. Sometimes, the black wolf soul walked inside it. Sometimes, it limped. Sometimes, she felt its pain as a silver ache along her. Cassian noticed every time she winced. You are hurt, he said. It was stabbed. The soul? She nodded. I think so. His hand tightened on the reins. And you feel it. Yes. The word came sharper than she intended. He absorbed it without defense. For a while, only the horses and wolves made sound. Then Cassian said, I did not know you were in the kennels. Nyra almost smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Kings rarely know who cleans beneath them. His jaw tightened. That is not an answer that spares me. It was not meant to. The silence that followed was not comfortable, but it was honest. They reached the northern river as the eclipse swallowed another third of the moon. The river was frozen black, its surface veined with blue light. On the far bank, dead birches leaned over the snow like watching elders. Erend lifted his head. The shrine is beneath the old battlefield, he said. But the bridge is gone. Cassian looked across the ice. Then we cross. No, Nyra said. Everyone turned. She did not know why she had spoken until she looked at the river. Beneath the ice, shadows moved. Not fish, not water. Memories, her memories. A child running over black ice. A woman screaming her name. Royal soldiers crossing behind them. Blood spreading beneath the frozen river like red thread. Nyra's breath shortened. Cassian dismounted. What do you see? She pressed a hand to her chest. I was here. The cub pushed its nose against her chin. The wolf soul rose from her shadow, wounded but alert, and stepped onto the ice. The river did not crack beneath it. Instead, blue light spread under its paws, forming images beneath the surface. A village burning, moon shadow refugees fleeing with children in their arms. King Alaric Vare, Cassian's father, riding beneath the crowned wolf banner. a small girl hidden beneath a broken wagon. Nyra staggered. Cassian caught her elbow, then released her as soon as she steadied. That restraint mattered, though she hated that it did. "This was not a battlefield," she whispered. "It was a hunt." Aaron's voice came from behind them. "History is named by whoever survives it." Cassian turned on him. "You will be silent unless truth requires you." The ice beneath the river flashed. A final memory appeared. Child Cassian, wounded by a silver spear meant for his father, collapsing into the snow while his wolf soul tore in half. Child Nyra crawled toward him, crying, her shadow opening around the escaping soul. Adult Nyra's knees nearly failed. "I saved you here," she said. Cassian looked at the image beneath the ice, his face pale. "Yes, and then they took me." Aaron did not deny it. The black wolf soul lowered its head to the frozen river and howled. The ice split, not breaking downward, but opening into a staircase of blue-black steps, descending beneath the river. The silver cub leapt from Nyra's cloak and stood at the first step, tail trembling. Cassian drew his sword. Nyra looked into the dark stair beneath the ice. From below came a woman's voice, soft with grief and older than memory. "Little shadow, you came back." Nyra stopped breathing, because for the first time in 12 years, she remembered the voice. Her mother was waiting beneath the river. The voice beneath the frozen river broke something open inside Nyra. "Little shadow, you came back." The words were soft, but they struck harder than any accusation in the king's hall. Her body remembered before her mind did. The scent of smoke under snow, the press of a woman's hand over her mouth to keep her silent. A lullaby hummed against her hair while wolves howled too close. A silver pendant, shaped like a dark moon, tucked beneath her shirt. "Mother." Nyra stood at the top of the blue-black stairway, unable to move. The river ice had opened cleanly, not like broken water, but like a door that had been waiting under winter for 12 years. Below, the steps descended into a glow cold enough to feel holy. The silver cub went first, tiny paws tapping the ice, then paused and looked back at her. Cassian stood beside Nyra with his sword drawn, but he did not step ahead. That mattered. He looked down into the stairwell, then at her face. "Do you want to go down?" The question almost hurt. So many people had decided what her fear meant. Aaron had called it instability. The court had called it guilt. The kennel masters had called it disobedience. Cassian asking did not erase any of that, but it placed a choice in her hands at the very edge of the place where her childhood had been stolen. Nyra swallowed. "Yes," her voice barely carried. Cassian nodded once. "Then I follow." Aaron laughed behind them, bound between two guards. How touching. The king follows the Omega into the tomb of her dead tribe. Nyra turned. For the first time, she did not flinch from his contempt. "You will follow too." His smile thinned. The stairs took them beneath the river. Ice closed overhead, sealing away the wind, the horses, and the howling night. Blue light moved through the walls in slow streams. Faces appeared inside the frozen depths. Women with silver eyes, children wrapped in dark cloaks, wolves standing beside human shadows as if both belonged to the same soul. The Moon Shadow people had not been erased here. They had been kept by the river when history refused them. Nyra touched the wall. A woman's face turned toward her from inside the ice. Her mother. Not alive. Not dead. Remembered. She had Nyra's dark hair and the same deep eyes, though hers held a silver ring around the iris. Her palms were pressed against the ice, as if she had been waiting on the other side of a window for years. Nyra stepped closer, trembling. "Mother?" The image smiled with unbearable grief. "My little shadow." Nyra's breath shattered. The silver cub pressed against her ankle. The black wolf soul in her shadow lowered itself to the ice floor, wounded and reverent. Cassian stood a few paces behind, his face pale, as if he understood that he had entered a grief his crown had no right to touch. The mother's gaze moved to him. Alaric's son. Cassian bowed his head. Yes, you carry his blood. I do. And his debt? Cassian's jaw tightened. I am beginning to. Erend scoffed. Do not answer a river ghost as if it holds court. The ice walls darkened. Every face inside them turned toward him. Nyra's mother looked past Cassian to the counselor. Erend Veilheart, keeper of erased children, burner of shadow names. For the first time, Erend went silent. Nyra looked at him. Veilheart? Cassian's eyes sharpened. Erend had always been called Lord Erend of the High Council. No one in the kennels had ever spoken another name. But the ice remembered what titles hid. Her mother's voice grew colder. Before he served Veilguard's crown, he was born from a moon shadow branch that betrayed its own people to survive Alaric's purge. Nyra stared at him. Erend's face hardened, but he did not deny it. You are one of us, she whispered. One of you? His voice cracked with disgust. I was born among people who thought hiding wolf. Souls made them holy. They refused to understand power. I did. I chose the side that would live. You sold them. I survived them. The ice flashed. A vision opened beneath their feet. Young Erend leading royal soldiers through a hidden pass, pointing toward smoke, hidden tents where moon shadow families slept. Alaric's forces descended before dawn. The river ran red under ice. Nyra's mother fled. With a child in her arms, Nyra could not breathe. Cassian seized Erend by the collar and slammed him against the ice wall. You led my father to them. Erend smiled through the pain. And because of that, Veilguard did not fracture into shadow clans and wolf kings. You are welcome. The black wolf soul in Nyra's shadow rose with a snarl that cracked the ice under them. Nyra's mother lifted one hand. The wolf soul stilled. Do not let rage do his work, she said. He has always survived by making others become what he accused them of being. Nyra forced herself to breathe. Then she looked at her mother's face in the ice. Why did I shelter Cassian? The question came out broken. Her mother's expression softened. Because you were a child who saw another child dying. Because mercy came to you before hatred could teach its language. Because shelter is not theft, Nyra. It is protection freely given. Then, why do I not remember? The ice dimmed. Because Erend took the memory so you would never know you had chosen. A person who forgets choice can be made to believe she was only used. Nyra looked down at her hands. Used. That was the word that had shaped her life. Fed because useful. Hidden because useful. Brought to the mirror because useful. Even now, the kingdom needed what lived inside her shadow. Cassian stepped closer, but stopped before entering her space. Can the memory be returned? Her mother's gaze held his. Yes. But memory is not gentle. If she remembers the shelter vow fully, she will feel everything the child carried that night. Her mother's death, your father's slaughter, your dying wolf, and the moment she opened her shadow, it may break her before it frees her. Cassian's face tightened. Then no. Nyra turned to him. He looked at her, startled by his own answer. Erend laughed softly. Still half a king. Still afraid of what must be done. Cassian did not look away from Nyra. I am afraid of making her pay again for my life. The words entered the ice. The walls glowed. Nyra's mother watched him for a long moment. Then perhaps the missing half has already taught you something. The eclipse trembled through the river overhead. Black shadows spread across the blue light. The wolf soul inside Nyra's shadow winced, its silver cracks widening. Nyra felt the pain and gasped. There was no more time. She stepped toward the ice wall and placed her palm over her mother's. I want to remember, she whispered. Cassian's voice came rough behind her. Nyra. She did not turn. Not because they need it. Not because you need it. Her throat tightened. Because I do. Her mother's face broke with grief and pride. Then hold fast, little shadow. The ice beneath Nyra's hand melted into silver light. Memory rose like a wolf from the dark, and Nyra fell into the night her world burned. Memory did not return like a dream. It returned like drowning. Nyra fell through silver light into snow, smoke, and screaming. The frozen river vanished. The shrine vanished. Cassian, Erend, the guards, the silver cub, all of them disappeared behind the night her mind had hidden for 12 years. She was small again, no higher than her mother's waist, running through a village of black tents and shadow wolf banners while fire tore through the roofs. Her mother's hand crushed hers. "Do not look back," she whispered, but child Nyra looked. Royal soldiers moved through the burning settlement beneath the crowned wolf banner of Veilguard. Wolves snarled. Children cried from beneath carts. Moonshadow healers raised their hands in surrender, only to be struck down because King Alaric Vare feared any bloodline that could hide wolf souls from royal command. Nyra saw Erend then, younger, standing beside Alaric in a dark cloak. He pointed toward the river pass. "They are hiding the children under the ice shelters." Her mother gasped, betrayed before the blade ever fell. "You led them here," she said. Young Erend did not look at her. "I chose the living side." The memory shifted violently. Nyra was shoved beneath a broken wagon. Her mother pressed a small dark moon pendant into her palm. "Stay small, little shadow. Whatever you hear, do not come out." Then a silver spear flew through the smoke. It had been thrown at King Alaric. It struck the boy beside him instead. Cassian. He was maybe 10 years old, dressed in a prince's winter cloak, his face pale with shock as he fell into the snow. Alaric shouted. Soldiers rushed forward, but something black and luminous tore loose from the wound in the boy's chest, half of his wolf soul, ripped away by the silver meant for the king. It rose into the air like a dying beast. The priests panicked. "Bend it. We cannot. It is splitting. Leave the damaged half and save the heir." Child Cassian opened his eyes. He was not a king in that moment, not a prince, not an enemy. Only a terrified boy bleeding alone while grown men argued over which part of him was worth saving. "Don't leave me," he whispered. Nyra crawled out from beneath the wagon. Her mother screamed her name. Nyra did not stop. She stumbled through the snow, dropped beside Cassian, and pressed both small hands over the silver wound. She did not know spells. She did not know politics. She only knew the thing tearing out of him was frightened. "Hide with me," she sobbed. "I know how to be alone." Her shadow opened. It spread beneath them like a dark blanket, warm at the center, deeper than night. The broken half of Cassian's wolf soul fell into it. Nyra felt its fear, its pain, its fierce need to survive. She wrapped it in every bit of warmth she had left. The world turned blue. Then her mother was there, shielding both children with her body as Alaric approached. "What has she done?" the king demanded. "She sheltered what your war tore loose," her mother said. Alaric stared at Nyra, as if a child's mercy were treason. "Can it be removed?" A priestess knelt, shaking. "Not without killing them both." Young Erend stepped closer. His eyes moved from Cassian to Nyra with cold understanding. "Then erase the girl. Keep her alive, but nameless. If the half-soul remains sheltered, the prince survives. If she remembers, she may one day command what she carries." Nyra's mother lunged at him. Alaric's blade struck first. Nyra screamed. The memory shattered. She came back to the shrine on her knees, choking on air that tasted of ice and old blood. Her hand was still pressed against the melting wall. Her mother's face remained inside the silver glow, weeping silently. Cassian was beside Nyra, one hand hovering near her shoulder but not touching, as if he had stopped himself at the edge of her grief. Erend stood under guard, pale but rigid. Nyra turned to him. "You watched my mother die," she said. Aaron's jaw tightened. Your mother doomed you by letting you shelter royal blood. No, Cassian said. His voice was low, but the shrine trembled. Nyra looked at him. He was staring at the black pool where his father's shadow still waited, his face carved with fury and grief. My father doomed her by making mercy a crime. Alaric's shadow rose higher from the pool. Careful, boy. You live because I allowed hard men to do what soft hearts could not. Cassian faced him. I lived because a child you hunted chose to save me. The shrine flared blue. The wounded wolf soul in Nyra's shadow stepped farther out, its silver cracks glowing. It looked between Nyra and Cassian, no longer trapped, no longer sleeping, but not yet returned. Aaron's voice sharpened. The eclipse is deepening. If the half-soul does not return now, his wolf hollows. Veilguard loses its king. Rival packs invade. Thousands die. Nyra closed her eyes. There it was again. The weight of a kingdom placed on the back of the person it had buried. She opened them and looked at Cassian. If I return it, what happens to my shadow? The shrine answered softly. A shelter emptied without honor becomes hollow. A shelter released with witness becomes whole in another form. What form? Silence. Cassian's expression tightened. No. Nyra almost smiled through the pain. You do not get to decide no for me. His face broke a little at that. I know. Alaric's shadow lifted one hand, and black ice chains shot from the pool, wrapping around Cassian's chest. He fell to one knee, jaw clenched, the eclipse shadow crawling over his skin. Aaron shouted, Now, Omega, return it before the king collapses. Nyra rose on shaking legs. The small handprint on the altar glowed for her. The clawed one burned for Cassian. The black wolf soul waited between them, wounded, enormous, afraid. Nyra placed her palm on the small print. Memory burned under her skin. She saw herself as a child again, not weak, not used, not faceless. A child who had chosen mercy when every adult chose fear. I remember the shelter vow, she whispered. The shrine answered with blue fire. Nyra turned to Cassian. I sheltered you because no child should die alone. His eyes locked on hers through the black chains. And I will return what I sheltered, she said. Only if you swear before this shrine that my people will not be remembered as traitors, and my life will not become another cage for your crown. Cassian's voice came rough. I swear it. Alaric's shadow snarled. A king does not swear to an Omega. Cassian lifted his head. No, he said. A half-king does not. A whole one begins there. The clawed handprint blazed. Nyra's shadow opened. The missing half of Cassian's wolf soul stepped fully into the shrine light, and instead of running to the king, it bowed first to Nyra. The missing half of Cassian's wolf soul bowed to Nyra, not to the shrine, not to the crown, not to the king whose chest it had once been torn from, to the abandoned Omega who had carried it through hunger, cold, kennel straw, and 12 years of being called nothing. For one breath, no one spoke. Even King Alaric's shadow seemed to recoil from the sight. The great black wolf soul lowered its frost-crowned head until its muzzle nearly touched the blue-lit stone before Nyra's bare feet. Silver cracks ran through its spectral body, but its eyes were clear now, ancient and full of grief. It had lived inside her shadow long enough to learn the shape of her loneliness. It had known the nights she gave her food to sick pups. It had known the blows she swallowed without sound. It had known every time she was useful, but never cherished. Nyra's throat tightened. You do not have to bow to me, she whispered. The wolf soul's answer came not in words, but in feeling. Warmth under winter, a child's gratitude, a beast's recognition. Cassian saw it. His face changed in a way that hurt to look at. He had come to the shrine needing to be restored, but the missing half of his soul had chosen first to honor the woman who sheltered it. That truth did more than shame him. It taught him what half of him had remembered. while the king forgot. Alaric's shadow snarled. Enough. Black ice surged from the pool, crawling across the shrine floor toward Nyra. Cassian strained against the chains binding his chest, but the eclipse had deepened. The dark moon above the buried shrine pressed down through stone, weakening his remaining wolf. Aaron's eyes flashed with desperate triumph. "Return it now," the counselor hissed, "before the eclipse hollows him completely." Nyra looked at Cassian. The chains had bitten into his armor. Blood marked his mouth. His wolf shadow, the half still inside him, flickered like a flame starved of air. He needed the missing soul. There was no lie in that. But need had been used against her too many times. Her mother's face glowed faintly in the ice wall. "Remember, little shadow, shelter freely given may only be freely returned." Nyra placed one hand against her own chest and the other toward the bowed wolf soul. "If I return you," she whispered, "I do not disappear." The shrine pulsed. The wolf soul lifted its head. Cassian's voice came rough through the chains. "No, you do not," Aaron snapped. "You cannot promise that." Cassian turned his gaze on him. "I am not promising as a relic. I am promising as the man whose life was hidden inside hers. If my wholeness requires her emptiness, then I refuse it." Alaric laughed, dark and cold. "Then you die half-made." Cassian's eyes returned to Nyra. "Better half-made than whole by theft." The words entered the shrine like a key. Blue fire climbed the altar. The small handprint beneath Nyra's palm warmed. The clawed print beneath Cassian's chained hand blazed bright enough to crack the black ice around him. The wolf soul stepped between them, its great body becoming smoke, frost, and moonlight. Nyra felt the old shelter vow open in her shadow. It did not tear this time. It unfolded. The wolf soul moved toward Cassian. But as it did, something silver remained behind a thin crescent of light in Nyra's shadow. Not stolen from him, not broken from her, but formed from the years they had survived apart. A shelter mark, a witness mark, proof that carrying him had not made her a vessel. It had made her part of the truth. The missing soul entered Cassian's chest. He arched back, with a sound that shook the shrine. The black chains around him shattered. His wolf became whole. For one terrifying moment, power flooded the cavern. The air filled with the scent of winter storms, bloodwood, royal fire, and something fierce enough to make every guard drop to one knee. Cassian's full wolf shadow rose behind him, enormous and crowned in frost, no longer hollow, no longer empty-eyed. But when it opened its eyes, it did not look first at the dead king, or Aaron, or the altar. It looked at Nyra, and bowed. Alaric's shadow screamed. The pool erupted. Black ice spears shot toward Nyra, but Cassian moved with whole soul speed. He crossed the shrine in a blur of dark armor and moonlit fur, placing himself between her and the attack. His restored wolf struck the ice with one paw, shattering the spears into harmless frost. "Still protecting the shadow child?" Alaric thundered. Cassian stood tall now, blood on his lips, eyes bright with the full force of the soul he had been denied. "No. Standing with the woman your crown tried to erase." The shrine flared. Aaron stumbled back. "Your Majesty, the kingdom cannot survive if you condemn your father's war." Cassian looked at the frozen faces in the walls. Moon shadow mothers, children, elders, wolves whose names had been turned into treason. Then the kingdom will learn what survival cost. Nyra stepped beside him, not behind him. Her shadow no longer looked ordinary. The shelter mark glowed within it, like a small blue moon. The silver cub stood at her feet, no longer trembling, its pale fur bright in the shrine light. Alaric's shadow drew itself taller. "You think mercy rules wolves? Mercy feeds enemies. Mercy weakens bloodlines. Mercy leaves kings bleeding in snow." Nyra looked at him then, truly looked. This was the man whose fear burned her village, killed her mother, and turned a child's compassion into a crime. For 12 years, his war had lived inside her silence. "Mercy saved your son," she said. The shrine went still. Alaric's face twisted. Nyra's voice shook, but did not break. "Not your crown. Not Aaron's laws. Not the council. A child you hunted saw another child dying and chose to help him. Everything you built after that was fear trying to punish mercy for proving you wrong." The blue fire brightened until every frozen face in the walls opened its eyes. Cassian raised his sword, but Nyra lifted a hand. He stopped. She looked at Aaron. "You erased me because you feared what I remembered." Then she looked at Alaric. "You buried my people because you feared what they could shelter." Finally, she looked at Cassian. "And he became cruel because you all taught him emptiness was strength." Cassian lowered his head once, accepting the wound. The shrine's voice filled the cavern. Witness named, shelter honored, blood debt awakened. The frozen walls cracked. From within them, the moon shadow dead began to glow, not as corpses, not as ghosts seeking vengeance, but as witnesses finally given shape. Their light poured toward the black pool where Alaric stood. The dead king stepped back. For the first time, fear crossed his face. Aaron shouted, "Stop this! If the old blood debt wakes, the throne will be judged." Nyra turned toward him. "Good." The word struck like a blade. The pool beneath Alaric froze solid from the edges inward. Blue light crawled up his shadow body, locking his war rings, his black ice crown, his raised hand. He struggled, but every face in the shrine watched him now. Every name he had burned, every child he had erased. Cassian spoke beside Nyra, voice low and final. "Alaric Fair, your war will no longer be called peace." The dead king's shadow cracked, but before he shattered completely, he smiled at Cassian with cruel certainty. "Break me if you wish. The court above will not kneel to an Omega's truth." Aaron prepared them well. The shrine shook. Far above, from the palace direction, horns began to sound. Not warning horns. War horns. Aaron smiled through his fear. "The noble houses have heard enough," he whispered. "A whole king guided by an Omega shadow. They will call it possession before dawn." Cassian turned toward the stair. Nyra felt the shelter mark in her shadow burn. The soul had returned, but the kingdom had not yet seen the truth. And above them, Veilguard was preparing to kill the woman who had made its king whole. The war horns reached the shrine of first shelter before the first soldiers did. Their sound rolled down through the buried stair, through black ice and frozen roots, through the walls where moon shadow faces still glowed with awakened witness. Nyra felt each blast in her bones. The nobles above were not coming to understand. They were coming to survive the truth by killing the person who carried it. Cassian stood beside her, whole at last, and more dangerous than he had ever looked on the throne. His restored wolf shadow rose behind him, vast and frost-crowned, no longer hollow-eyed, no longer divided, yet the power in him did not erase the grief. If anything, wholeness made the pain sharper. He could feel everything now. The burned village beneath the river, the kennels where Nyra had slept cold, the years he had ruled with mercy locked inside another person's shadow. Lord Aaron heard the horns and smiled. "You see?" he said, voice thin with triumph. "The kingdom protects itself. A ruler may have doubts. A court does not. By dawn they will call her shadow, spell the reason you turned against your bloodline." Cassian turned toward him. "You taught them that language. I taught them order." Nyra looked at the frozen faces in the shrine walls. Her mother's face was among them, no longer trapped in pain but watching with sorrowful pride. The shelter mark glowed inside Nyra's shadow, a small blue moon where the king's soul had once slept. She had returned what she carried. She was not empty. But the court would never believe that unless the shrine itself spoke above ground. "How do we show them?" she asked. Cassian looked at her. The frost mirror. It shattered. The mirror showed truth because your shadow carried witness. His gaze dropped to the blue mark at her feet. Maybe the mirror was only one door. The shrine answered before Nyra could. Blue fire ran across the altar, and into the 2 handprints. The clawed print, where Cassian had placed his blood. The small print, where Nyra had remembered the vow. Between them, ice opened, revealing not a passage, but a shard of the original frost mirror buried beneath the altar. It was small, no larger than Nyra's palm, but its surface held the same deep winter light. The shrine's voice whispered, "Witness must be carried, not commanded." Erend went pale. Nyra understood. The shard would not obey Cassian's crown. It would not obey Erend's law. It had to be carried by the one who remembered. She picked it up. Cold moved through her hand, but did not burn. Inside the shard, she saw a flicker of child Nyra sheltering the dying boy. Then, adult Cassian swearing not to restore himself by emptying her. The shard held both truths. Mercy given, mercy honored. Cassian stepped toward the stair. "Stay behind me when we reach the hall." Nyra looked at him. He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "No, that was wrong." A faint ache moved through her, almost like the beginning of a smile. Almost. "Yes." He tried again, voice lower. "Stand where you choose, but if they strike, I will answer. That I can accept." Erend laughed bitterly. "Listen to yourselves. The king asking permission while the houses sharpen blades. This is how crowns die." Cassian looked at him. "No, this is how mine begins." The guards dragged Erend up the stair behind them. The silver cub walked at Nyra's side, small but steady now, while the restored half of Cassian's wolf remained with him, its presence filling the passage like a winter storm held in check. They emerged beneath the throne. The judgment hall had changed. Where nobles had once stood in elegant horror, now armed house guards formed ranks across the marble floor. Alpha lords wore half-shifted claws and bared teeth. Lady Sorel of the eastern houses stood at their front, her white veil gone, her pearl collar replaced by a silver war chain. Behind her, several council banners had been raised upside down, the old sign of emergency rule. At the shattered frost mirror, priests gathered broken glass into a basin as if trying to hide the truth piece by piece. Sorel's eyes fixed on Nyra. "Step away from the king." Cassian climbed fully from the stair. "No, she has returned with moon shadow magic at her feet, and your wolf suddenly whole. We all saw what the mirror showed, but we also saw the danger. If she can shelter half your soul, she can command all of it." Nyra lifted the mirror shard. "Then look." Sorel recoiled. "I will not be judged by gutter relics. The frost mirror was royal enough when you thought it would condemn me." The words struck the hall. Cassian's eyes flicked toward her, not with surprise this time, but fierce approval he did not try to own. Erend shouted from the guard's grip, "Do not let her raise it. The shard will twist your sight." Nyra raised it anyway. Blue light burst across the hall. Every broken piece of the frost mirror answered from the priest's basin, flying upward and forming a jagged circle behind Nyra. The court saw the truth in fragments. Alaric burning the moon. Shadow Village. Erend betraying his own people. Child Nyra sheltering Cassian's torn wolf. Soul. Erend erasing her memory. Cassian refusing restoration that would hollow her. The missing soul returning by choice. No one spoke. Even Sorella had gone still. Then the shard showed the final truth. Cassian's restored wolf bowing to Nyra, not because she controlled him, but because she had carried mercy when his crown abandoned it. A low sound moved through the hall. One by one, the royal wolves lowered their heads. Some alphas followed unwillingly. Others resisted, shaking with humiliation and fear. Sorel's face hardened as she saw control slipping. "This proves nothing," she snapped. "A soul can be grateful and still be compromised." Nyra lowered the shard slightly. You are not afraid he is compromised. You are afraid he is whole. That silence was deeper than any spell. Cassian stepped beside her, crownless, his wolf bright behind his eyes. Lord Errand will stand trial for memory theft, attempted murder, and the enslavement of a shelter, bloodchild. King Alaric's purge will be entered into royal record as massacre, not peacekeeping. Every abandoned Omega ledger will be opened before Winter Court. Chaos erupted. Sorel drew her blade. Then the Eastern Houses reject your restored rule. Several alphas roared agreement. Cassian's wolf surged, but Nyra caught his sleeve, not to stop him from protecting her, to remind him what they had just learned. He looked at her hand, then at her face. The old Cassian might have answered rebellion with slaughter. The whole Cassian had to choose something harder. Nyra stepped forward and lifted the mirror shard toward the armed houses. If you believe I command the king, she said, then swear on the frost mirror, Zerelle Fros. Nyra's voice steadied. Swear your rebellion is for Veilguard, not for fear of what the ledgers will show. The mirror shard turned toward the Eastern Alpha, and Lady Sorel's reflection began to bleed black. It started at the throat. In the mirror shard, her pale neck split open with a thin line of darkness, not blood, but ink shadow, the kind used on forbidden ledgers sealed beneath noble houses. The real Sorel stood rigid before the armed Eastern guards, her blade still drawn, her face caught between fury and fear. Around her, the Alpha Lords who had roared rebellion moments earlier fell silent, as the frost mirror's broken circle behind Nyra brightened with cold blue fire. Nyra held the shard steady, though her fingers trembled. Swear, she said again. Swear your rebellion is for Veilguard. Sorella's lips parted. No words came. The shard showed a hidden chamber beneath the Eastern Manor. Rows of abandoned Omega children sleeping behind iron bars, their names replaced by numbers, their work contracts stamped with the seal of House Sorel. Another image followed, Errand handing her a list of lower kennel names. Nyra's name circled in black ink. A command written beside it. Keep alive, never elevate, never release. The hall recoiled. Nyra's breath stopped. Sorel knew about her. Not everything, perhaps. Not the full truth of the wolf soul. But enough. Enough to know Nyra was not merely abandoned. Enough to know her survival had been managed, like a royal asset. Cassian's voice turned deadly quiet. How long? Sorel lowered her blade an inch. The Eastern Houses funded the kennels. We fed your unwanted. You bought them. We maintained labor Veilguard required. The mirror flashed black. Lie twisted into law. Nyra felt the old anger rising, but beneath it came something steadier. She had been afraid that if the court saw the truth, all they would see was Cassian's missing soul. But the mirror was showing more. Her life had not been one isolated cruelty. It was part of a system built to make certain children useful, invisible, and grateful for scraps. The silver cub pressed against her ankle and growled. Small, but clear. Sorel's warriors shifted uneasily. Nyra lifted the shard higher. Who else signed the ledger? The mirror answered. House marks appeared across the blue fire. Sorel, Thornmere, Veilheart, Duskwold, 3 northern border houses, and the seal of the Royal Council. Gasps broke through the hall. Some nobles stepped back from their own family crests, as if distance could make them innocent. Errand laughed from his chains. There. You have your truth. Now what? Will you arrest half the kingdom? Empty the kennels? Free every Omega before winter stores are counted? You think mercy feeds cities? Cassian turned toward him. No. People do. The ones you kept collared. The restored wolf inside him rose behind his eyes, and this time the hall felt the difference. The cold king they had known would have killed the loudest traitor and let fear do the rest. The whole king looked more dangerous because he was no longer using emptiness as judgment. Sorella saw it too. She raised her blade again. Then we invoke Winter Challenge. A king, compromised by shadow. Blood may be tested before the court. Several Eastern alphas struck their swords against the floor. Cassian stepped forward. Nyra caught his sleeve again. This time, he did not look surprised. She looked at the mirror shard, then at Sorel. She does not want to test you. She wants to make this about strength, so no one speaks about the ledgers. Sorel's eyes sharpened. Careful, Omega. Nyra stepped away from Cassian, into the open. The hall seemed to tilt with the movement. I have been careful all my life, she said. Careful not to take too much food. Careful not to speak when nobles passed. Careful not to let sick pups die too loudly. Careful not to remember what you all buried. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. I am done making my survival quiet, so your crimes can remain peaceful. The frost mirror blazed. Truth. For one breath, the armed houses faltered. Then Sorella lunget. Not at Cassian. At Nyra. Cassian moved, but Nyra raised the shard before Sorel's blade reached her. Blue light burst outward, and the mirror did not stop the attack by force. It showed Sorel herself reflected in the blade. Not noble, not righteous, but standing over the cage of Omega children beneath her manor, while winter food stores sat locked behind her. Sorel screamed, but the vision held. Her warriors saw it. Her own wolf saw it. The Eastern Alpha's wolf tore free from her control, just enough to drag her to one knee. Her sword clattered to the floor. The hall erupted. Some Alphas shouted treason. Others backed away from the mirror. Royal guards seized Sorel before her loyalists recovered. Cassian lifted one hand, and his restored wolf's command rolled through the room. Not empty dominance, but a force made sharper by truth. Enough. The word silenced the hall. Cassian turned to the court. Winter challenge is denied. The frost mirror has accepted witness. Every house named by the ledgers will surrender its records before moonset. Every abandoned Omega in royal, noble, or council custody is under crown protection until judgment. Erend spat blood onto the marble. You will start a civil war. Cassian looked at Nyra before answering. Not for permission, for witness. Then let it begin over truth, he said, not over the lie that children are cheaper than peace. Nyra felt the shelter mark in her shadow burn brighter. The black wolf soul had returned to him, but something of its memory remained with her. Not power over Cassian, not ownership. Witness. The frost mirror shards behind her spun slowly, then formed one final image. The shrine of first shelter beneath the river, the moon shadow faces glowing in the ice, and Nyra's mother watching the hall through blue light. Her mother's voice filled the chamber. My daughter was not abandoned. She was taken. Nyra's knees nearly weakened. Cassian stepped closer, stopping before touching her. Nyra. She kept standing. The court stared as the mirror showed a child's true name written in moonshadow script. Nyra of the Sheltered Moon. Not Veil. Not Kennel Blood. Not abandoned. The name burned blue above the broken mirror, and every wolf in Veilguard answered with a howl. Then the palace doors burst open. A wounded scout collapsed onto the marble. Your Majesty, he gasped. The eastern houses have released the kennel chains. They are marching the Omegas north as hostages. Sorel smiled through blood. Nyra's shadow went cold. The court had seen the truth. Now the guilty houses were making the innocent pay for it. The wounded scout's words turned truth into war. The eastern houses have released the kennel chains. They are marching the Omegas north as hostages. For one breath, the judgment hall did not move. The broken frost mirror shards hung behind Nyra in a ring of blue fire. Lady Sorel knelt in chains, blood at her mouth, smiling as if her defeat had only been the first door of a larger trap. Lord Erend stood under guard, with the calm of a man who had expected cruelty to survive exposure. Around them, nobles stared at the scout, as if the word hostages belonged to some distant battlefield, not to the abandoned children and laboring Omegas who had fed their houses through winter. Nyra felt the silver cub press against her ankle. Her shadow had gone cold, not empty, not hollow, cold with recognition. For 12 years, people like her had been moved when others needed leverage, hidden when others needed silence, fed when useful, threatened when truth approached. The Eastern houses had not denied the ledgers. They had simply reached for the nearest throats. Cassian turned toward Sorel. His restored wolf rose behind him, frost-crowned and whole, filling the hall with a pressure that forced every weak-hearted noble back a step. "Where are they taking them?" Sorel lifted her chin. "To the northern pass. If you want your precious ledgers alive, you will suspend judgment and return the Shadow Girl to Crown custody." Crown custody. Nyra almost laughed. Another soft name for a cage. Cassian's face went deadly still. "You mistake me," Sorel smiled. "No. I finally understand you. Whole or not, you are still king. A king cannot let hundreds die for one Omega's pride." Nyra stepped forward before Cassian could answer. The hall turned to her. For a moment, fear tried to become the old habit in her bones. "Lower your eyes. Let the powerful decide. Do not make the hostage-takers angrier. Do not make the pain worse." Then her mother's name burned faintly in the mirror shards behind her, and the habit broke. "They are not dying for my pride," Nyra said. "They are being threatened because your houses cannot survive being seen." Sorel's smile sharpened. "Fine words. Will they warm the children chained in snow?" The words hit. Nyra saw it. The northern road, frightened Omegas dragged in lines, children stumbling through ice, guards using them as shields against the king's judgment. Her hands shook around the frost mirror shard. Cassian saw. He stepped close, not in front of her, not over her, beside her. "We ride." Erend laughed softly. "With what army?" "Half the houses in this hall are named by her mirror. The other half will wait to see who wins." Cassian looked across the court. "Then let waiting be remembered." No one moved. That silence named the kingdom more clearly than any ledger. Then an old kennel master near the lower arch slowly lowered his spear. "I will go," he said. Every noble turned toward him in disbelief. He was not important, not titled, not even fully armored. His beard was gray, his back slightly bent from years of carrying winter feed. Nyra knew him by sight. Master Oren. He had never been kind enough to be safe, but he had once left extra broth near the sick pup stall when he thought no one saw. Oren looked at Nyra, shame deep in his weathered face. "I locked chains I told myself I did not forge. That is not innocence." A second guard lowered his weapon. Then a stable boy. Then 2 lower-ranked wolf handlers. The royal wolves moved first among the beasts, circling toward the open doors, their heads low, waiting for Nyra's shadow and Cassian's command. Not enough for a war. Enough for a beginning. Cassian drew his sword. "Any house that rides with me, rides under witness law. No hostage harmed. No Omega used as shield. No revenge killing. We take the chains off before we take heads." Nyra looked at him. That was the whole king speaking. She realized. Not soft, not gentle, but no longer hollow enough to mistake slaughter for strength. The frost mirror shards spun faster. Blue light formed a path across the floor, through the broken doors, toward the north. In the shard Nyra held, the moving hostages appeared. A line of Omegas in frost. Chains, guarded by Eastern riders, crossing the wolf road under the darkening eclipse. Among them were children from the kennels, sick pups in cages, old servants walking barefoot in snow. Nyra saw a little girl fall. An Eastern rider raised a whip. the mirror went black before it landed. Nyra's breath caught. Cassian's voice was low. We reach them before the pass. Sorel laughed from her chains. The pass is narrow. They will kill the hostages before you can strike. Nyra stared at the mirror shard. Not if they saw what they were doing. The thought came from the shelter mark in her shadow, not as a plan exactly, but as a memory of the shrine. Witness did not always fight by force. Sometimes it made the hidden impossible to hide. She turned to the broken frost mirror ring. Can they see us? The shards pulsed. Erin's face changed. No. Nyra understood. She lifted the shard high. Then let every chained Omega see they have been named. Blue light erupted upward through the shattered ceiling. Outside, above Veilguard, the darkening moon caught the mirror's glow and spread it across the storm clouds. Images formed in the sky, the stolen ledgers, the kennel cages, Sorel's hidden chambers, Erin's orders, Alaric's purge, Nyra's true name, Cassian's restored soul, bowing to the shelter that saved it. And far north, under the Wolf Road, the hostage line stopped. The Omegas looked up. So did their guards. For the first time, the prisoners saw that the palace knew. For the first time, the guard saw that the sky knew. One child in chains lifted her face and whispered something the mirror carried back to Nyra. We are not faceless anymore. The frost chains along the hostage line began to glow blue. Sorel screamed, "Stop her!" Too late. The chains did not break. Not yet. But every lock on them turned visible. Every house seal burned bright. Every rider holding the chain was marked by the sky. Cassian mounted his black warhorse beneath the open doors. His full wolf ran beside him like a storm shadow given teeth. Nyra climbed onto her winter mare, with the silver cub tucked beneath her cloak and the frost mirror shard held against her heart. The court watched them ride into the eclipse. Behind them, those with courage followed. Ahead, the northern pass waited with hostages, traitors, and the first true battle of Cassian's whole reign. And in Nyra's shadow, the shelter mark burned brighter than fear. The northern pass appeared beneath the eclipse, like a wound cut through the mountains. Black cliffs rose on both sides, their frozen walls shining under a moon half devoured by shadow. The Wolf Road narrowed there, forcing every rider, every prisoner, every child in chains into a single line between stone and sky. If the eastern houses wanted a place where hostages could stop an army, they had chosen well. Nyra saw the line before she heard it. Omegas in frost chains. Kennel children wrapped in torn gray cloaks. Old servants limping through snow. Sick wolf pups carried in wire cages. Eastern riders surrounded them with spears lowered, each rider's house seal now burning blue on his armor, because the frost mirror had marked them before the sky. The hostages had stopped moving. They were looking upward. Across the storm clouds, the mirror's witness still burned. Nyra's true name, Erin's ledgers, Sorel's hidden cages, Alaric's purge, and Cassian's restored wolf, bowing first to the abandoned Omega who had sheltered it. The sky itself had become a court. No noble house could close. Cassian reined in beside Nyra. Behind them came no grand army. Only royal wolves, lower guards, kennel workers, stable hands, a few ashamed alphas, and those brave enough to choose truth before victory was certain. It was not enough to crush the eastern houses, but it was enough to be seen. Sorel's captain rode forward from the hostage line, a red cloak snapping behind him. One more step, and the first chain opens. Nyra's stomach tightened. The first chain was not a release. It was a deathlock. She saw the mechanism now because the mirror shards showed what ordinary eyes missed. Each frost chain was linked to a throat seal. If the eastern riders triggered it, the hostages would choke before Cassian's wolves reached them. Cassian's restored wolf growled beside him, huge and black against the snow. The captain smiled. Your Majesty, surrender the Omega and the mirror shard. Call the sky witness false. Restore the council's authority. Then the hostages live. Nyra felt every gaze turn toward her. There it was again. The old bargain. Give up the girl, save the many. Silence one wound, preserve the kingdom, make mercy, pay for peace. Cassian did not answer immediately. That brief silence mattered. Not because he hesitated to protect her, but because a whole king understood the cost of every choice now. The hostages were real. Their fear was real. Their lives were not tools for a dramatic vow. Nyra looked at the children in chains. One little girl stared back, blue light shining on her tear-streaked face. We are not faceless anymore. The words returned to Nyra like a flame. She lifted the frost mirror shard. The captain's smile vanished. Lower it! Nyra's hand shook, but her voice carried through the pass. You are holding people whose names the sky has already seen. A rider laughed harshly. Names do not stop blades. No, Nyra said. But they stop graves from staying quiet. The shard flashed. Blue light spread across the hostage line, touching every frost chain. One by one, names appeared above the captives. Mara of the Lower Hearth, Tomrin Ash, Born, Lysa of Kennel 3, Orin's daughter, Sile. Dozens, hundreds, not numbers, not labor marks, names. The hostages began whispering them aloud. The frost chains trembled. The captain shouted, Silence them! A rider raised his whip. Cassian moved like winter judgment. His wolf struck first, not at the hostage line, but at the snow between captor and captive. Black frost erupted, throwing riders from their saddles without touching the chained omegas. Royal wolves surged along the cliff walls. Lower guards rushed forward with knives made for cutting kennel locks, not throats. The pass exploded into motion. The captain triggered the first deathlock. Nyra felt it happen before she saw it. The little girl's chain tightened at her throat. Nyra screamed and thrust the mirror shard toward her. The shelter mark in her shadow blazed. The shard did not break the chain by force. It reflected the child's name into the lock itself, making the metal remember what it had been built to deny. The lock opened. The girl fell into the snow, gasping. Then another lock opened. Then another. Across the hostage line, names burned brighter than seals. The frost chains began unlocking wherever the captives spoke, their own names aloud. Some voices were weak, some broken, some uncertain because they had not heard their names in years. Nyra shouted, Say them! And they did. The pass filled with names. Cassian fought like a king who had finally learned what he was defending. He did not slaughter blindly. He cut riders away from prisoners. He broke spear hafts, shattered chain rings, drove his wolf between children and blades. When the Eastern captain lunged for Nyra, Cassian stepped toward him, but Nyra raised the shard first. The captain's reflection appeared in the ice. Not as a warrior. As a boy once sold by his own house to pay a border debt, later adopted into violence because violence was the only place he was given power. His face twisted. Nyra did not pity his choices, but she saw the wound beneath them. He faltered just long enough for Cassian to disarm him. The battle ended not with victory cries, but with chains falling into snow. Sorel's riders either fled or knelt. The hostages stood unbound in the northern pass, shaking, crying, holding children and pups against their chests. Behind them, the eclipse began to loosen its bite from the moon. Lord Errand was dragged forward by guards who had finally chosen a side. Lady Sorel, brought from the palace under royal escort, was forced to witness the freed hostages name the houses that had owned them. Cassian faced them all beneath the clearing sky. From this night, he said, no abandoned child in Veilguard will be recorded as property. No kennel, noble house, council chamber, or royal law will hold an omega by debt, blood, or silence. The ledgers open before dawn. The shrine of first shelter will be restored. and King Alaric's purge will be named for what it was. His voice hardened. Massacre. The word moved through the pass like a bell. Errand closed his eyes. Sorel looked away. Nyra stood beside Cassian, with the silver cub in her arms and the frost mirror shard dimming in her hand. The king's soul was whole again, but her shadow was not empty. The shelter mark still glowed there, small and blue, proof that mercy had changed both of them. Cassian turned to her. The freed hostages watched. So did the wolves. He did not take her hand. He did not call her mate before a crowd hungry for a cleaner ending. He did not claim that her shelter had made her his. He bowed his head, not as a king to a savior, as a man to the woman his kingdom had used, hidden, and finally failed to erase. Nyra of the sheltered moon, he said, Veilguard owes you more than a crown can repay. I owe you more than my life. Her throat tightened. You owe me truth after tonight, she said. Yes. And work. Yes. And if I stay near the throne, it will not be because half your soul once lived in my shadow. His eyes held hers, silver gray and steady now. No, it will be because the whole of you learns what that half already knew. A faint pain moved through his face, almost tenderness, but he did not rush it into romance. Then I will learn. The silver cub licked Nyra's wrist. Around them, the freed Omegas began walking south, not dragged, not counted, not hidden, but named beneath the clearing moon. Nyra looked once toward the northern river, where her mother and the moon shadow dead waited in restored memory. Then she turned toward Veilguard, toward the kennels, the ledgers, the court, and the long work of making a kingdom face what it had survived by burying. Cassian walked beside her, not ahead, not above, beside, and in the snow behind them, the frost mirror shard reflected no guilt, no throne, no abandoned child, only a woman with her own shadow.